Hello Internet, welcome back to Trumps to Twilight, the channel where I, Vincent, talk to you about movies, books, music that I find interesting, that I enjoy, or a combination of the two. I already published my Friday video, which is a discussion of the character Frank Booth from Blue Velvet, but I just wanted to jump on and do a kind of unplanned video sharing my thoughts because I just recently today saw a video by Professor Skye, and I want to share some comments about the video. Professor Skye, if you don't know him, is an academic, an American academic. He teaches French, I believe, and French history at an American college. He's a tenured professor, and his profile on YouTube is that he talks a lot about music, does a lot of stuff about hip hop, very knowledgeable about the genre and about pop culture in general. Very smart guy. To be honest, I don't know why I'm introducing him because I have like roughly 30 viewers and he has like, I don't know, thousands at least. The guy's YouTube famous. But he released a video about this parody music video. Edit to say that the video in question is called Cruel to Me, and it is by Kyle Gordon in character as the lead singer of a band called Stool Sample. I'm going to link Professor Skye's video and the original video for the song down in the description. Comedy, parody, new metal song which looks and sounds as if it is from about 1999. It's a guy rapping like Fred Durst, singing a refrain that sounds like Linkin Park, and generally making fun of the whole kind of new metal genre. And I just want to say, first of all, that I think that the broad points that Professor Skye's making about the music video and the song are basically right. I mean, I don't think there's any argument about whether or not the 90s was a sexist time. It was, probably more so than today. And mainstream culture in the 90s was super white. There's definitely no doubt about that. Like loads and loads of people, their favorite hip hop artists were the Beastie Boys and Eminem for a reason. So like the broad critique of like 90s culture that Professor Skye is coming with in this video is certainly not like super incorrect. But I think there are some problems basically with the way that he was describing it, and I just want to explain what I think those problems are. So Professor Skye says basically, okay, back in the 90s, white, middle class, cis het, straight men thought that they were being rebellious and that they were, and they were expressing misery. They didn't realize that they were the most privileged people in the world. And then he says, like, we looked up to Kurt Cobain, and 90s was the 90s was a nihilistic time, but it was a quaint nihilism. And then he mentions Korn, and he talks about Paranoid Android, and he describes all of these things as being kind of like nihilistic, but kind of empty gestures at rebellion. And I thought this is really weird because what are the things that he's choosing to describe? So he talks about Korn and he mentions Freak on a Leash. Now, I was never any big fan of Korn, but I had their first album and I listened to that a lot. There's two tracks on that album that I think are brilliant, which is the opener Blind and Ball Tongue, which is just, I think, still like a really good song. But so from listening to that album, I know not enough about Korn to know that the pain that Jonathan Davis was expressing through Korn's music came primarily from two places. One of them was that he was bullied and excluded in a macho, homophobic, jock-focused, conformist education system in America, and that he was kind of expressing the kind of alienation that strange, different, unusual kids felt within the exact culture that Professor Skye is trying to critique. Plus, the other source of Jonathan Davis's isolation, pain, sadness, and emotional issues was child sex abuse. So to kind of say that, this was all just an empty expression of white cishet middle class ennui, I think is pretty fucking offensive. That's number one. Number two, new metal. Okay, Limp Bizkit obviously is like an empty, stupid, very easy to parody band, which this original music video is parodying very effectively, because Limp Bizkit took the gestures of rebellion, but applied them with no content. But Limp Bizkit got their sound basically from two places. One was Korn, and the other was Rage Against the Machine. And Rage Against the Machine had a single out the same year as the this music video seems to be set. They released Guerrilla Radio, and Guerrilla Radio was all over MTV. And Guerrilla Radio was a critique of capitalism with a music video that was parodying the Gap, showing how the clothes that the very people Professor Skye is criticising were wearing were made in sweatshops. Additionally, two of them were people of colour, the two main songwriters. So to talk about this kind of alternative culture as if it was like purely a white and like empty expression of aggression and rebellion, when Rage Against the Machine was so central, in my opinion, Professor Skye, you're erasing something very important. All right, let's talk about Kurt Cobain. Kurt Cobain, the apparent hero of white, cis, straight men that Professor Skye is talking about, regularly wore dresses on stage, wore makeup, hated homophobia, spoke out very eloquently about it, said himself that although he was married to a woman, if she'd have been a man with the same personality, he would have been equally interested. One of his best friends and his great hero was Michael Stipe. Michael Stipe was one of the major figures of alternative culture in the 1990s and the late 1990s, possibly the biggest rock star in the world at the time. And Michael Stipe is gay. Let's talk about nihilism, the nihilism of the 90s, this empty nihilism that Professor Skye talks about as being a cis, het, straight, white phenomenon. In my opinion, you can't name three more important nihilistic writers from the 90s who shaped the cultural zeitgeist than Bret Easton Ellis, Chuck Palahniuk, and Dennis Cooper. What do all these three men have in common? They're all gay. Professor Skye is talking about Fight Club. Who wrote Fight Club? A gay man. What else was like a big expression of rebellion, counterculture, and brought like rock music and nu metal into the mainstream around that time? That, my friends, is the movie The Matrix. Who made The Matrix? Two trans women. My point, okay, admittedly, they were pre-transition at the time, so we didn't know they were trans women. But my point is that the perspective, the cultural critique that was kind of driving that particular zeitgeist at the time, to a large degree, came from queer people. And I think it's kind of disturbing to be like, this was a white, straight, cis-het phenomenon, when all of these people here, Rage, are not white. None of these writers are straight. Kurt Cobain was like sexually fluid. The Matrix is made by trans women. So what is going on? Well, in my opinion, Professor Skye is doing a thing that a lot of white academics around our age tend to do, which is because it's become very clear that the field for such a long time has been dominated by the very demographic he's talking about. He is doing the only thing you can very comfortably do, which is give a critique which shames yourself, and in so doing kind of sidestep that critique. Like, you can get praise for critiquing your very participation in the systems that you wish to critique, right? And I'm not completely against that, but the problem is that when you do it in the way that I'm describing, where you gloss over all of the implicitly queer aspects of 90s alternative culture, and you gloss over the origins of this ennui, right? Douglas Copeland, he popularized the term Generation X. The guy's gay, right? And his books are this like deliberate engagement with this kind of with this quaint nihilism. So this isn't a straight phenomenon. And I think to say that it is in order to like critique it is an erasure that is essentially equivalent to the same kind of nostalgia that Professor Skye is trying to critique. He's saying like, oh, you know, the right wing conservatives look back on the 90s as like a simpler time because it was like at that time there was cis straight or cis het hegemony, but now we realize that that was bad. And the thing is, it wasn't. So saying that is just the same as like Satanists inverting Christianity. That's what he's doing. It's the same nostalgia reversed. What would be more interesting would be to admit or to give space for the polyphony of that period instead of flattening it into a stereotype that suits your public self-flagellation. One last thing I forgot to mention along the way. He says, we had everything and we made Paranoid Android. And then at the end of the video, he talks about how his wife was Serbian, and in Serbia, things were very different in that period because NATO was bombing the shit out of the place. I think that's such a weird thing to say, because on the same album as Paranoid Android, OK Computer, Radiohead also had a song called Lucky. And where was Lucky first released? It was released on the War Child album, which was a benefit album for the people of Kosovo in the Balkans. And who wrote the inlay for the War Child album? The bass player from Nirvana, Kurt Cobain's childhood friend, who was from the Balkans and who was engaged with the unrest there. It's just another example, just in case I hadn't made my point strongly enough. All right. This channel's not a YouTube drama channel. I'm not doing responses. I just wanted to make this case so that I could stop thinking about it and relax for the weekend. I have no animosity for Professor Skye, and I think he does good work. So I say all of this with love. Okay. Have a good weekend.